David and Emily had just arrived in Las Vegas, the city of lights and excitement, for what was supposed to be the perfect honeymoon. They were both exhausted, but thrilled to start their new life together. The hotel they had booked was known for its luxurious suites, and they were excited to experience the best that Vegas had to offer. As they entered their suite, a wave of disappointment washed over them. A strange, unpleasant odor greeted them the moment they stepped through the door. The room was elegantly decorated, with plush furnishings and a breathtaking view of the city, but the smell tainted the entire experience. It was a scent that neither of them could identify, stale and sour, like something had been left to rot. David, ever the problem solver, immediately called the front desk and asked to speak with the manager. He explained the situation, emphasizing how unbearable the smell was. The manager was apologetic but firm. Due to a major convention in town, all the other suites were booked. He offered to send them to a top-rated restaurant for lunch while the hotel staff worked to eliminate the odor. Trying to make the best of the situation, David and Emily accepted the offer and went out to enjoy their meal. The restaurant was exquisite, with an extensive menu and impeccable service. They tried to push the thoughts of the smell out of their minds and focus on enjoying their time together. 2 hours later, they returned to their suite, hoping that the problem had been resolved. But as soon as they opened the door, the foul odor hit them again, even stronger than before. Frustration and anger welled up in David as he called the front desk once more. The manager was sympathetic but helpless. Every hotel in the area was fully booked. Determined not to let this ruin their honeymoon, David decided to take matters into his own hands. He was convinced that something in the room was causing the smell, and he was going to find it. Emily watched as her husband methodically began tearing the room apart, his determination growing with each passing minute. He started with the obvious places: the closet, the bathroom, the drawers. Nothing. The smell seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Finally, in a moment of desperation, David yanked the top mattress off the bed. What he found underneath would haunt them forever: a decomposing body of a woman, hidden between the mattress and the box spring. Emily screamed, and David stumbled back in shock. The horror of the situation crashed down on them both, as they realized they had been sleeping inches away from a corpse. The police were called, and their romantic getaway turned into a nightmare that neither of them would ever forget. The sun was setting on the beautiful island of Oahu, casting a warm golden glow over the beach. Matt and Jessica were on their honeymoon, enjoying every moment of their tropical paradise. The waves gently lapped against the shore as they sat together, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Jessica excused herself to go to the restroom, leaving Matt to enjoy the serene view. She walked towards the restroom, feeling the sand shift beneath her feet. As she approached the building, she noticed a man standing nearby, his eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. He was tall, with a scruffy beard and unkempt hair, and something about him felt off. Jessica quickened her pace, hoping to avoid any interaction, but as she entered the restroom, the man followed her. She could feel his presence behind her, a looming shadow that made her heart race. When she tried to leave, he blocked her path, a sinister smile spreading across his face. Panic surged through her, but just as quickly, 2 other beachgoers entered the restroom, forcing the man to step aside. Jessica took the opportunity to escape, her heart pounding in her chest. She rushed back to Matt, breathless and shaken. She told him about the man, her voice trembling with fear. Matt looked around, trying to spot the man, but he had already disappeared into the crowd. They decided to report the incident to a police officer patrolling the beach, but with so many people around, there wasn't much the officer could do. Trying to shake off the unsettling encounter, they returned to their hotel, hoping to put the incident behind them. After washing up, they headed out for a romantic dinner at a nearby seafood restaurant. The food was delicious and the atmosphere was perfect, but Jessica couldn't quite relax. The image of the man's creepy smile kept replaying in her mind. As they returned to their room late that night, they began to unwind, ready to end the day on a positive note. But just as they were about to settle in, there was a knock at the door. Matt, assuming it was housekeeping, peered through the peephole and saw a man dressed in a maid's uniform standing outside. Confused, Matt opened the door slightly. just enough to ask the man what he needed. The man, without hesitation, tried to push his way into the room, claiming he had left something inside while cleaning earlier. Matt knew this was impossible. They had left the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door all day. As the man pushed harder, his eyes met Jessica's. Recognition flashed in her eyes, and she screamed, "That's him." The man lunged at Matt, one hand tightening around his throat while the other reached behind him, pulling out a knife. Jessica, acting on pure adrenaline, grabbed the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and smashed it over the man's head. The impact caused the man to stumble back, and Matt shoved him out of the room, slamming the door shut. Jessica immediately called the front desk, her hands shaking as she explained the situation. The commotion had already drawn attention from other guests, and soon the hallway was filled with people. The police arrived quickly, and the man was apprehended. As they led him away, Matt and Jessica held each other tightly, thankful to be alive. The horror of what could have happened lingered in their minds, but they knew they had narrowly escaped a much darker fate. Tom had always prided himself on being a careful driver, especially when his family's safety was at stake. The long drive from New York to Florida was a familiar route for him, but this time they were heading to Disney World, a trip that had been planned for months. His wife, Linda, and their 2 kids were sound asleep in the backseat, the soft hum of the engine lulling them into peaceful slumber. It was late, around 11 p.m., and they were just crossing the Georgia border. The highway was eerily quiet, with no other cars in sight. Tom kept his eyes on the road, the monotonous stretch of asphalt stretching endlessly before him. The only light came from the headlights, casting a dim glow on the road ahead. Suddenly, in the distance, Tom noticed 2 red lights flashing. They weren't the typical police lights, but more like emergency SOS signals. Instinctively, he slowed the car, his grip tightening on the steering wheel as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. As he got closer, the scene became clearer. A car was parked sideways across the road, deliberately blocking the entire lane. 2 orange cones flanked the vehicle, and the SOS lights blinked rhythmically on the ground. 2 men, dressed in dark hooded sweatshirts, emerged from behind the car, walking slowly towards Tom's vehicle. Every alarm bell in Tom's mind went off. He knew something was terribly wrong. He quickly put the car in reverse, his heart pounding as he prepared to back away. One of the men approached the driver's side window, his face partially obscured by the hood. Tom cracked the window just enough to hear him, but not enough to let him reach inside. "Do you need help?" Tom asked, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. The man didn't respond at first, just stared at Tom with a chilling intensity. Then, in a low, commanding tone, he said, "Open the door." Tom's instincts screamed at him to get out of there. Without another word, he rolled up the window and threw the car into drive. The man began to reach for something in his pocket, but Tom didn't wait to find out what it was. He floored the gas pedal, the car lurching forward as it sped past the makeshift roadblock. In the rearview mirror, Tom saw the headlights of the men's car appear, racing towards them. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized they were being followed. Linda stirred awake, her eyes widening in fear as she took in the situation. Tom quickly explained what was happening, trying to keep his voice calm for the sake of their children. The car behind them drew closer, its headlights blinding as it flashed them repeatedly. Suddenly, there was a loud pop, and Tom felt the car lurch to the side. One of their tires had blown out. He struggled to keep control, but before he could react, a second pop echoed through the night, and the car began to drag along the road. Panic set in as the realization hit him. They were being hunted. Linda frantically dialed 911, her voice trembling as she relayed their location to the operator. The kids were awake now, crying in the backseat, their small voices filled with fear. Tom kept the car moving as best as he could, but the car behind them started ramming into their trunk, the impact jolting them forward. He could hear Linda pleading with the operator, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Just when Tom thought all hope was lost, a miracle happened. The distant wail of a siren cut through the night, and red and blue lights appeared behind them. The pursuing car immediately veered off the highway, taking the nearest exit. The police car followed in hot pursuit, leaving Tom and his family shaken but safe. Tom pulled over to the side of the road, his hands trembling as he finally let go of the steering wheel. He took the phone from Linda and spoke to the operator, explaining everything in as much detail as he could. The police arrived within minutes, followed by a tow truck. They inspected the car and confirmed Tom's worst fear. Both back tires had been shot at. The officers assured Tom that they had caught the men responsible, thanks to a timely call from another driver who had encountered the same roadblock. The relief that washed over him was overwhelming, but the fear lingered. What if they hadn't been so lucky? If you've made it this far, you're 100% a horror fanatic and we approve. If you love our campfire-themed horror storytelling experience, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads. The sun was shining brightly as Sarah and Mark drove along the scenic route in Street Martin. The Caribbean island was everything they had dreamed of for their vacation: beautiful beaches, warm weather, and crystal clear waters. They had rented a car to explore the island, eager to discover the hidden gems that weren't on the typical tourist maps. As they drove along a quiet, isolated road, they marveled at the lush greenery and the tranquility of the surroundings. It was a stark contrast to the bustling tourist spots they had visited earlier in the day. The road seemed to stretch on forever, with no signs of civilization in sight, just endless fields of tall crops swaying gently in the breeze. Suddenly, something caught Sarah's eye. Just off the road, partially hidden in the crops, was the back end of a car. It was an old, rusty vehicle, its neon blue paint faded and chipped. It looked like it had been abandoned there for years, left to be swallowed by the vegetation. Mark slowed the car, curiosity piqued. "Stay here," he told Sarah, his voice tinged with concern. He got out of the car and cautiously approached the old vehicle, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of life. Sarah watched from the passenger seat, her heart pounding in her chest. She saw Mark peering into the windows of the car, his expression growing more serious by the second. Then suddenly she saw him jump back, his face pale as he stumbled away from the car. "Mark, what is it?" Sarah called out, her voice shaking with fear. She couldn't just sit there. She had to know what was going on. She got out of the car and hurried over to where Mark was standing, his eyes wide with shock. "Don't look," he warned, but it was too late. Sarah followed his gaze and saw what had caused his reaction. Underneath the car, barely visible in the shadows, were two men. They were lying on their backs, their bodies hidden from view. But what caught Sarah's attention were the large knives they held in their hands. In between them, sprawled out and lifeless, was a body. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the reality of what she was seeing hit her. The men weren't just hiding, they were waiting, and the bloody scene before them confirmed her worst fears. "Get back to the car now," Mark ordered, his voice filled with urgency. He practically shoved Sarah back towards their vehicle, his eyes never leaving the men. They had started to move, crawling out from under the car, their knives glinting in the sunlight. Sarah scrambled into the passenger seat, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the door. Mark was right behind her, slamming the door shut and jamming the key into the ignition. The car roared to life, and Mark floored the gas pedal, sending them speeding down the road. They didn't stop until they reached a small village, the first sign of civilization they had seen in miles. Only then did they pull over, both of them breathing heavily, their hearts racing. They immediately called the police, their voices trembling as they described what they had seen. The authorities arrived quickly, but by the time they reached the abandoned car, the men were gone. The body, however, was still there, a gruesome reminder of the danger they had narrowly escaped. Sarah and Mark tried to move on from the experience, but it left a lasting mark on them both. They had come to Street Martin for a relaxing vacation, but what they found was a nightmare that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The cruise ship glided smoothly through the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, a floating paradise for the thousands of passengers on board. Among them was Emily, a 16-year-old girl enjoying a much-needed vacation with her family. The cruise had been a gift from her grandparents, and it was supposed to be 10 days of fun, relaxation, and adventure. Emily shared a room with her older brother, Ryan, who was 20. The two siblings were close, and they spent most of their time together, exploring the ship and enjoying the activities. One night, they decided to check out the nightclub on board, a popular spot for the younger crowd. Emily wasn't old enough to get in, but Ryan had managed to sneak her in using someone else's ID card. The club was dark and crowded, with loud music and flashing lights. Emily tried to enjoy herself, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She glanced around the room and noticed a man sitting by the wall, his eyes fixed on her. He was older, probably in his 40s, with a creepy, unsettling gaze that made her skin crawl. Emily tried to ignore him, but no matter where she moved, his eyes followed her. Feeling uncomfortable, Emily decided to leave the club. She found her sister and her sister's boyfriend at the bar outside and sat with them for a while, trying to shake off the strange encounter. But when she looked across the room, her heart skipped a beat. The man was there, sitting at a table, still staring at her. Emily's mind raced with questions. Who was this man? Why was he following her? She didn't want to cause a scene, so she kept quiet, but the fear gnawed at her. She eventually excused herself and hurried back to her stateroom, her pulse quickening with every step. When she reached her room, she breathed a sigh of relief, thinking she was finally safe. But the moment she stepped inside, she noticed something strange. The door had been left ajar, and the light was on. Emily was sure she had closed it when she left, and her brother was still out, so who had been in their room? Cautiously, she checked the room, her heart pounding in her chest. Everything seemed to be in place, but the unease lingered. She decided to lock the door and try to get some sleep, hoping her brother would return soon. Sometime in the middle of the night, Emily was jolted awake by a strange sensation. Something was brushing against her cheek, something cold and clammy. She opened her eyes and screamed in terror. A hand was reaching out towards her from the darkness. In a blind panic, Emily pushed the hand away, thinking it was her brother playing a prank. But as her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she realized the figure standing by her bed wasn't Ryan. It was the man from the club, his face twisted into a grotesque smile. Emily's scream echoed through the stateroom, loud enough to wake Ryan. He leaped out of bed and turned on the light, revealing the man in all his terrifying glory. Without thinking, Ryan lunged at him, tackling him to the ground. Emily joined in, hitting the man with anything she could find. A lamp, a book, anything within reach. The commotion attracted the attention of other passengers, and soon there was frantic knocking at the door. Their parents burst in, and their father helped Ryan pin the man down while their mother called for security. The man was arrested and taken to the ship's jail, but the damage had already been done. The experience left Emily traumatized, and she couldn't shake the image of the man's face, the way he had looked at her as if she were his prey. The rest of the cruise was a blur of anxiety and fear. Emily couldn't walk down the ship's corridors without feeling like she was being watched, and every shadow seemed to hide a lurking threat. The joy and excitement of the vacation were gone, replaced by a deep, lingering terror. Even after they returned home, the memories haunted her. She avoided crowded places, stayed close to her family, and refused to go on any more cruises. The once adventurous girl had been replaced by someone who lived in constant fear, always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for the next nightmare to begin.